Happy Monday, everybody. What is going on? We are here for our, I should say, WWE Raw review for August 11th, 2025. And I need help from you guys in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was tonight's show kind of weak? I feel like it was. Very kind of lackluster show in my mind. They were thrown a little bit of a monkey wrench today. As we already knew, as previously announced, we were supposed to get Naomi defending her women's championship against Iyo Sky on Raw tonight. And then a few hours before the show, they announced on social media that that match would not be taking place due to Naomi not being cleared. So with everything going on with Seth Rollins and Karrion Cross, and now we have to wonder if everything they do is a work or not. It does make you wonder about Naomi, but it does seem legit, like there must be some sort of an issue with her. I haven't seen what it is yet. Maybe you guys have, but hopefully everything is okay with Naomi, because we don't want to see her have to forfeit or relinquish the title at all. I would really like her to see this run through, if at all possible. She has a big match coming up in Paris against Stephanie Vaquer. That was assuming she retained tonight, which I expected her to. And I'm hoping that she's got a nice little run here before probably dropping it to Rhea Ripley in Perth. But if anything is serious with Naomi and she's going to be out for an extended period of time, they are going to have to strip her of that title, and let's hope that doesn't happen. But that match didn't take place, but without that even happening, I still thought the show wasn't that great. Like, I feel like it could have been good. Like, just losing that match wouldn't be enough to completely kill the show. And I'm not blaming it on losing that match at all. It's just the rest of the show really had nothing going on in my mind. We got a nice little closing angle there with the Vision and Rollins and Punk and Knight and Jey Uso. And we got our big World Heavyweight Championship match announced for Clash in Paris by Adam Pearce, who was just on one tonight. He was just getting overly frustrated every time he turned around, and he did make Seth Rollins title defense official for Clash in Paris, and it will be a four-way because Seth tried to fool us again tonight by claiming he was going to leave and go jump on the plane only to return later. But in terms of the rest of the matches, and what we saw, it was okay, but nothing too great, and a lot of it was predictable. A lot of DQ finishes tonight. We had, at least two of them for DQs, and they were both unbelievably predictable. And the other matches were just, okay. They set up a few things for the pay-per-view. I did like the Bayley vignette that we saw. That was somewhat interesting, but overall the show just did not feel great to me. I was barely watching it. Just had one eye on it all night. So I'm like, this is going to be a quick review tonight. We're going to come up here for just a few minutes, review the show, and I'm going to get the fuck out of here, I guess, because I don't even know what kind of audience we're going to have for a Raw that appeared to be this boring to me. Maybe I'm being a little harder on it than other folks are being, because it's not like it had no bright spots at all. Iyo Sky versus Roxanne Perez, which was the replacement match for Iyo Sky and Naomi, was really good. That was a really, really good match. So it's not like the show was all bad. It still had, some good stuff on it. But overall, I thought just a lot of what they were doing felt a little bit predictable, especially with the main event. You didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but you knew it was going to be some sort of a schmoz with a whole bunch of run-ins. And the way I thought the Seth Rollins thing was going to go when he was backstage tonight telling the rest of the Vision that, hey, you guys got this in your tag match main event. I'm going to go ahead and leave and get on the plane. I'll see you guys later. I thought that was for one of two reasons. Number one, for him to be lying again and to show back up, which is what turned out to be the case, or for him to leave his boys high and dry, and let's say Roman Reigns comes back tonight, or it's Punk and Knight and Uso and Roman all ganging up on Reed and Breakker, and they're like, yo, Seth, what the fuck? You left us out there, to get our asses kicked. So I thought it was going to be used for one of those two reasons. And, of course, it did turn out to be Rollins. He did come back and make his appearance in the main event, lying about the whole thing, which is what triggered Pierce's decision to make that fatal four-way main event. So at Clash in Paris. So we'll be talking about all that tonight. Also, we're going to get into a little bit of wrestling news, just a little bit. Two stories I want to touch on. Number one is WWE counterprogramming AEW for All Out, and an update on Karrion Cross. which we did discuss a little bit on the podcast on Saturday and even a little bit last night in the watch-along. Thanks to everyone who joined in for our WCW Road Wild watch-along last night. That was fun, to say the least. Highlight of the show had to be Miss Elizabeth in her biker gear. That was my favorite part, but thanks for being here last night. Thank you for being here tonight. Smash that thumbs up button, subscribe, all that stuff. We'll run through the show's results here tonight, and then I will be bailing out of here because I got a busy week coming up. But you will be seeing more of me this week here on the channel, and I'll be putting up a link to this Sunday's watch-along. We'll be here for Saturday, on Saturday for the podcast as usual, all that kind of stuff. I don't think we have a ton of people here in the chat yet, so let me just say hello to who's here. Zane G., Melissa Hernandez, Doug Unfunny, we got Tatanani, Mike Rouse, Crazy J, Max Pokebrood, David Brown, JL, Sonic Plays, Kevin, DJG, Denny Downbad, Ajax Johnson, Angie is here. So is Zach, Ken Webb, Ricky Zalvadar. Oops, I froze. There we go. Let me move my screen. Anybody else that is here, thank you so much. And again, please do me a favor, hit that like button for me. And I think we should get into some of that wrestling news that we need to discuss first. And the first one is a story that came out today. This was broke by Post Wrestling about WWE continuing to counter-program AEW. Now, of course, AEW responded a little bit as well with, I forgot what show it was. What is it, All Out? All Out is on the 20th in Toronto, right? That's where All Out is going to be. And WWE has announced that, or we have learned that WWE is going to be scheduling a main roster, not an NXT or an all-women's or anything like that. This is going to be a main roster pay-per-view to go head-to-head with All Out. So this will be the first time that this has happened with a main roster show. Here's what Post Wrestling reported today. Post Wrestling spoke with multiple sources with knowledge of the WWE event schedule who confirmed that a yet-to-be-announced PLE will take place on Saturday, September 20th in Indianapolis, Indiana. The date coincides with AEW's All Out pay-per-view scheduled for Scotiabank Arena in Toronto and represents the first time a WWE main roster PLE will air the same day as an AEW pay-per-view. We've yet to confirm the start time of the WWE event. All Out is scheduled to begin its pay-per-view broadcast at 8 p.m. Eastern. So it still remains to be seen what this thing is called and if it is actually going to go head-to-head. But I feel like it will. I feel like that's the whole point. They wouldn't want to run the show earlier. Otherwise, you just run it on a different day. And it looks like that's going to be a pretty big one. They're going to basically create a PLE just to go head-to-head with All Out because this was not on the calendar previously. We just went right into Crown Jewel after Clash in Paris, and then it's on to Survivor Series. And one of the things we talked about last weekend, or this past weekend on the podcast, when we saw John Cena come out on Friday and make a match with Logan Paul at Clash in Paris. So we were wondering where that Brock Lesnar match is going to take place. Is it going to be Crown Jewel? Could it be Survivor Series here in San Diego? Where's that match going to take place? I think we now know where that match is going to take place. It's going to be Brock Lesnar and John Cena going head-to-head with All Out. So that's what WWE is going to do. They are going to counter-program AEW All Out and run a show head-to-head with it, and it's going to be one of their main roster shows. So one thing that's going to have WWE at an advantage is they're going to have this shit for free on Peacock where you're going to have to pay for All Out. And, when you put fans in the position of having to choose, if one of those choices costs $50 and the other one doesn't, I think that choice is pretty clear for a lot of fans. What I would do if I'm Tony Khan, this is something that he said before, and I'm certain this is not ideal for, what he wants to do in his business, but you might have to do it just this once, unless WWE keeps doing this to force you to keep doing it over and over. Maybe just for this one, you stream it for free on Max. Tony Khan has addressed the counter-programming stuff before in AEW pressers, and he's mentioned a couple of times the comparisons with himself and what WWE did with Jim Crockett Promotions back in the day. And one of the things he said, he goes, I have a lot more money than Jim Crockett Promotions, and it will not go the same way. So if Tony Khan really wants to try to even the playing field, so to speak, and WWE's going to run a Brock Lesnar versus John Cena match up against his All Out. Maybe just for this pay-per-view alone, you eat the cost of, the pay-per-view buys and you stream it for free on Max, and you hammer the fuck out of that into the fans' heads. From this coming Wednesday all the way until September 20th, I want Excalibur mentioning that All Out is for free more often than WWE told us how much the WWE Network costed back in the day. $9.99, $9.99, free on Max, free on Max, free on Max. Maybe this is something, too, that could help motivate. Not that he needs any motivation. I know that this has been discussed and worked on internally behind the scenes in AEW, but it's another reminder how AEW probably does need to move away from that pay-per-view model as quickly as possible, because if this is something that's going to keep happening, and your shows are $50 a pop or whatever the fuck are we paying now, $40, whatever it is, they're $50 a pop, and WWE's pay-per-views are free, this might give you more incentive to try to reach a media rights deal for your pay-per-views to be shown somewhere, preferably Max or whatever. So, maybe for the future, this won't matter so much if AEW and WWE shows are both streaming on a platform that everybody already has. Then you're truly forcing the fans to choose. But a lot of fans, that decision might be made for them. I want to watch wrestling I want to watch AEW, but shit, they're giving me Brock Lesnar and John Cena for free and $50 over here, I'm only making minimum wage. Fuck, I'm going to watch John Cena and Brock Lesnar. There's going to be a lot of that happening. Maybe $50 is just too much, especially if they're being teased with a humongous match that everybody's going to want to see regardless. Now, I'm assuming, we're going to do a watch along that night. We're going to double screen it. But I'm buying the pay-per-view. I'm going to make AEW my priority, and we're going to have WWE on in the background. That's what we're going to do for that night. But everybody might not be that way. They might be choosing, or they might be double screening it, paying attention to more of one than the other. But maybe for this one, Tony Khan, makes it a huge deal and books some special matches, or makes it free streaming on Max, or whatever he does there to maybe counter this. I don't know. And can you guys help me out? What show am I thinking of? I thought it was AEW announced the date of a show recently. Oh, it's next year. It's next year, I think, right? They just announced a show head to head. I think it's Money in the Bank. I think Money in the Bank and All In next year are on the same weekend, because Money in the Bank was already announced, right? And then they came in and announced All In for next year. I think that's what I'm thinking of. So Tony Khan's starting to get it a little bit, and I hope that, he fights back a little bit, because, this is just absurd. It's just you got these tribal assholes. You got a whole contingent of fans, with this tree branch up their ass about AEW. They just can't stand them, and blah blah blah. And when it comes to running head-to-head, I remember when WCW did this. I remember Vince on one of those documentaries or one of those interviews that he did, he talked about how silly it was to run head-to-head with them. Why would you want to divide the audience? And this is something WWE's been doing time and time again. Recently with AEW, they have been forcing the fans to kind of choose a little bit. And so for all the fans that, have this, their AEW is nothing, they're a mud show, 15 people are on, this is the same shit, this is the same repetitive stuff from these MAGA type of wrestling fans. They just say things that aren't true. Only 15 people watch watch Dynamite every Wednesday. 15, huh? Is that really what you think? AEW is obviously the clear number 2, but they are so far ahead of everybody else. That little comment that Bischoff made about all TNA needs is a TV deal and they're going to be a number 2. No, they are not. They are not even close. Even with WWE's help, they're not close. And if they were going to be the number 2, it would take WWE's help to get that done. They've been around for, 22 years, and the biggest crowd they ever drew was 7,000 fucking people a couple of weeks ago? Jesus Christ, there is no comparison. AEW will never reach the heights that WWE is in. But no other company will reach the heights of AEW either. So they are number 2, big deal. The fans that hate that company believe that number 2 means you're nothing. Being number 2, the second, listen to me here, the second biggest wrestling promotion in the world. The blue-green ball spinning around the sun. The second biggest in that blue-green ball, and the fans that hate them say 15 people watch Nitro every week. That's how insane the wrestling fans are. They also like to claim that AEW is not competition. WWE is proving y'all wrong. This is exactly the way you react to competition. WWE believes that AEW is not only competition, but strong competition that needs to be dealt with, bullied, stifled at every turn. If they weren't worried about AEW, they wouldn't be doing this. If they weren't so insecure, scared, weak, and pathetic, they would welcome AEW to do whatever the fuck they want. We're so confident that our product is vastly superior to yours. We don't care what you do. Bring it. Bring it on. But they're not like that. They're trying to harm them every chance they get, which that's what this is all about. It's completely legal to do that. And competition is healthy. There's nothing wrong with competition at all. You know, even back in the day, you know, some of the counter-programming stuff, Raw and Nitro, even though it was silly that you had to choose, you know, it was fun. It was fun going through that, switching channels, flipping channels every single Monday night. It was all part of it. So even though it's probably not a good business decision to go head-to-head, it did make that fun for the fans. Pay-per-views, however, are a completely different story. You know, because if you have to pay for one and not the other, and then, you know, you have to choose how to manage your time. Luckily today, in the age that we're living in technology, everybody's got multiple devices. If this was 1998, you would legitimately only be able to watch one or the other. You know, unless you wanted to buy 2 pay-per-views and put them on separate monitors, which means you would need 2 cable boxes, 2 TVs. It cost you $100 to do that. You know, so today it's a little bit easier. Everybody has multiple devices in their home or apartment, wherever you live. You got a TV, you got your phone, you got your computer, you probably got a tablet around, you probably got a second TV somewhere. You know, your fucking toaster probably plays video if you want it to. There's lots of ways to be able to kind of watch both, but you're still only going to be able to give your attention to one of them. So, you know, it's not like I have too many complaints about this. This is what the WWE has already told us they're going to be doing. And we've heard reports recently that WWE is going to ramp up these efforts to counter-program AEW, basically telling us this shit ain't going away. Expect it to continue and to get worse. So for a company that's not competition, and for a mud show that only draws 15 people for Dynamite, apparently, you know, this wrestling company that's not only had a TV deal, but has re-upped and re-signed a new TV deal. They're on cable television, a big network. They got lots of backing. They've got all the money in the world. They can compete with free agents. They have good staff, good trainers, good agents, good talent there. This little mud show that only 15 people watch is not competition, huh? Well, WWE says otherwise, and now they are counter-programming an AEW show with a main roster PLE, and I'm not going to lie, as much as that irritates and infuriates me, because just the way WWE is, it also makes it kind of interesting. That will be an interesting night of wrestling. It will be fun to watch Adam Copeland and Christian winning the tag team titles from FTR at the same time that John Cena is getting F5'd by Brock Lesnar. That's going to be a wild night. We're going to be split screening that. So we'll be here watching both as best we can to watch both. You know, luckily for me, I'm in a position with a YouTube channel and a job that I can make this fun, you know, but for fans who are just sitting at home trying to enjoy some wrestling, this is kind of like a pain in the ass. You're going to have to watch one now, one later, and you might burn yourself out from wrestling as well. I think that's what WWE was, you know, trying to do a little bit too with All In Weekend, and just put a lot of wrestling out there, and then they can get the last laugh. They can control the headlines, that type of thing. So we'll see who controls the headlines coming out of All Out and whatever this WWE pay-per-view is going to be called. Because if it's Brock and John Cena, you better book something big for All Out. Otherwise, I don't know how that's going to be able to create more buzz than whatever WWE is doing on their PLE. So my hope is that WWE, just with this bully, snotty fucking attitude they have and this desire to be the shittiest person in the room at all times, I'm hoping at some point that backfires on them. I hope they mismanage a situation or misread a situation. Feels like they're already doing that. They're walking around with their big fat snouts up in the air. They are so arrogant and they are so up their own ass that they believe that this boom period and this period of success that they're experiencing right now isn't going to go anywhere. Fans are just going to pay whatever. They will always be here. They will follow us off to the end of the earth. And no, they won't. Yes, some will, but you guys have seen how you've alienated your fans before. You've already done this a couple of times, and it looks like they've learned nothing from their mistakes. But with each passing shitty thing they fucking do, and now even kind of pissing off some of their own. Because a lot of those people that are kind of like either outwardly or passively aggressively dislike AEW and like WWE, they are massive Karrion Cross fans. And I've been watching some people struggle, with that on social media. I'm like, oh man, they're all up Cross's ass, but they're all kind of towing WWE's company line too. What's going on now? Now they're all like really, really desperately hoping that this shit with Cross is going to eventually turn into a work. I think that's what they're really, hoping for there. But WWE, they're starting to alienate fans of all walks of life. At some point they will alienate the MAGAs too, They will do something they're going to come out with their own version of the Epstein files. Maybe that's what this Cross stuff is. And a bunch of them are going to turn on them too. They have got to stop believing that no matter what, the fans are going to gobble up everything they give them. I think even as dumb as fans can be sometimes, they even have their limits. And now this is something we're going to have to worry about for every single big pay-per-view. And you have to also wonder if AEW will try to fight back in that regard. And whenever WWE announces a show before AEW does, they try to land a show over there. So it might turn into this war of both of these companies doing this to each other. Maybe Tony Khan wants to try to run the biggest pay-per-view he can find on WrestleMania weekend or something like that. Not necessarily to... because I mentioned that once before. I would go, Mike, or WWE would kill them. Yeah, we know. We're not fucking stupid. That's not the point. The point is making a dent in WWE's viewership. Of course, WrestleMania is going to take priority for most fans, but not all fans. And having another show running head-to-head with that could eat away at all these numbers that WWE likes to whack off to on social media. Oh, yesterday's SummerSlam got 75 million likes on this platform and 20 million views on this one and whatever, right? All these things they like to tout. You run a show head-to-head with them, you can put a dent in that. So I hope that something backfires. I hope Tony Khan finds himself in a really good opportunity with a WWE show to completely fuck them over. And if it gets to the point where AEW is able to do this in such a way to where it does give some sort of a noticeable effect on WWE numbers. I'm not talking about beating them. Fans are so obsessed with that. They're not going to beat them. We're not talking about beating them. We're talking about doing something in such a way that it definitely affects their numbers and it's noticeable. And then once that happens, then we might get that call from Nick Khan or whatever saying, okay, we got to stop doing this. Because we were doing it to hurt them. Now it's starting to hurt us. But it's going to have to hurt a lot. That's the thing. I don't know if AEW is strong enough to put that much of a hurting on WWE because I believe they're willing to take a little bit of that. They screwed their women over with that Evolution pay-per-view. The pay-per-view was great, but imagine if that was on a weekend all on its own. Imagine if that was given a little bit more time to be built. Imagine if they put a little bit more effort into it. The women delivered. It was a kick-ass show. But I feel like it could have been an even better show had WWE treated it for what it was and not just a counter-programming tool against AEW. And they kind of carried that into the next night Raw. Remember, the whole damn show was women's matches until the main event. So WWE does great by the women. The women's division is terrific and whatnot. But I feel like that Evolution show should have been somewhere else. And they knew that all the other stuff going on, All In and the NXT show could affect that. And it also affected NXT. Nobody gave a fuck about NXT that Saturday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning. Fucking having ladder matches at 10 o'clock in the morning. Fuck off. What's the point of even doing that? So maybe the women isn't as good of an example as the NXT show is, because the women still delivered. They still did good numbers. Fans loved it. And a lot of fans considered that the best pay-per-view of the weekend. So I think NXT is a better example, but still, Evolution, as good as that show was, imagine if they gave it a little bit more time and energy and focus in the build, and they put it on a weekend where it was all by itself, where it could be on a stage on its own. They still had a good crowd, 7,000 or 8,000 people, whatever was there, but they could have done 15. If they just would have built it and marketed it the way WWE, only WWE can, you know what I mean? So it doesn't feel like them hurting themselves is something that they're going to be too concerned about unless it's really noticeable, unless it puts a chunk in some of those numbers and they don't like what they see, and then they kind of back off this a little bit. We will see, but it sounds like it's going to be a game of chicken here. Both of these companies are going to be doing this for the foreseeable future, and All Out is only the beginning. And this is going to be a return, of the Monday Night Wars. We had a taste of it on the Wednesday Night Wars for just a short amount of time, but that might now evolve into pay-per-view wars. Because back in the day, Vince had the ability to threaten the cable providers and say, hey, if you carry the NWA show or the WCW show, I'm not going to give you my show. You can't do that now. Pay-per-views, streaming is streaming. Triple H can't call up fucking Bleacher Report and be like, don't air the pay-per-view, or fucking what, or YouTube TV or whatever. I buy my AEW pay-per-views on YouTube now. They can't call up YouTube and say, hey, if you got to stop carrying their show or we're going to pull all of our content off YouTube. They're not going to do that. So you can't really affect that now. And you have the ability where you might not have had that ability in the 90s or even the 2000s, and definitely not the 80s, of going head-to-head on pay-per-view. So that might be the new thing. And one thing that could come out of that would be a benefit to the fans, much like we've seen from WWE. It's funny how they completely fucking sucked, and they were the ones with a whole half arena tarped off and no fans on the hard cam side and crickets during every promo and every single pay-per-view and TV show and match was so uninspiring and emotionless and just passionless. And then AEW comes around and felt like WWE got their shit together real quick. And granted, we had COVID, we had the Thunderdome and whatnot, but, it felt like WWE was saying, okay, we can't just mess around anymore. And they have, look at how they've grown, especially with, their attendance and how they've really, really turned the corner. And a lot of that was because of AEW. They forced WWE to start giving a shit. And WWE proved that when they give a shit, they can kind of be pretty good. And so then we were sitting pretty for a couple of years there. We're like, wow, WWE's finally got its act together. AEW's this new kid in town that's really making some waves. Their shows and pay-per-views are exciting. WWE's starting to figure it out. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan. But now we're starting to get into the nastier part of competition to where, the real war, isn't going to be with the fucking mouth-breathing incels on social media. It's going to be behind the scenes with these companies trying to outplay and outmaneuver each other. And I just hope that Tony Khan can hold his own because he's richer than WWE. He's got the most money. He's got the most fuck you money to play with, where TKO and WWE, their hands are going to be tied with shareholders and budget and all that stuff. And so, whatever TK needs to spend to keep these guys off their backs, maybe that's the point. They're going to just force TK into bankruptcy. Hey, if we keep forcing him to give away all his pay-per-views or spend all his money, he'll eventually just run out. I don't know what WWE's strategy is, but for the long term, I feel like there could be some weeks where this could be a really, really fun thing for a fan. Oh, the WWE's or AEW's pay-per-view was looking a little weak this particular one for some reason. I don't know. Maybe there's maybe not Revolution, but Full Gear. Yeah, on paper, it's okay, but it's not great. And then WWE's running some big super show the same weekend. I'm like, okay, well, one way or the other, I'm going to be entertained by wrestling. What would be really funny if both of these companies put on shit pay-per-views on the same weekend and the fans got double screwed. But some of that could be beneficial in terms of the companies really putting their best foot forward. WWE specifically, a lot more than AEW. WWE has this tendency to really phone shit in and be very formulaic. I think that's some of my issues with Raw tonight. Just felt on the formulaic side. And it's nice when they're kind of forced out of that comfort zone a little bit. And so if you have these two PLEs going head-to-head, both companies are going to do their best to outdo each other. That way, when it's over, the fans are saying, I like that one more than that one, that each company wants to win, right? So at least we will be provided with some great wrestling when we have these head-to-head shows, because we have seen how WWE does when they feel like they have some competition. They finally started giving a shit. AEW does the same thing, and both of these companies could be doing their damnedest to outperform the other, which could result in good news for fans. Could be fun for us. But I think future ones, AEW, I would not expect just to sit back and take this bullshit. So I feel like they're going to do it too. And they have every right to. I wouldn't just sit there and allow WWE to use me as a punching bag. Fuck you. I'm going to run head to head against your shows too. And if WWE is hoping that this is some sort of AWA thing, it's not going to be. Vern Gagne tried to do that. When Vince was running his territories, Vern tried to run his and it didn't work. But it's not the territory system anymore. AEW can run New York and do fine. They can run Boston. They can run the Northeast and be fine. Where it might not have been like that back in the day. So maybe WWE's so arrogant they think, oh, we can run head to head with them, but if they try to do that to us, they're gonna get slaughtered. Great, have that arrogance, because it's the pride goeth before a fall, right? It's always that arrogance that leads to the downfall. So let them think that, and maybe we can get, this period of pro wrestling that right now, even though we haven't had a great 2024 or 2025, excuse me, and 2024 was just okay. 2023 was tremendous. Things are still pretty good. Maybe with this ensures that it will continue to be. That, if we have a weekend where WWE and AEW shows are running head-to-head, I would like to look forward to those more often than be annoyed by those. You know what I mean? But I don't want that happening every month. And now you're seeing WWE. It appears as if they are creating an event. It's not like it's one that they've had on their calendar forever or anything like that. We don't even have a name for this yet. They are creating an event specifically to go head to head with All Out. That's fine. They have every right to do that. Hey, September 20th. I think it was September 22nd. What was the date of Mind Games in '96? I don't know why I thought it was September 20th. I think it's the 22nd. But anyway, WWE will be running head-to-head with All Out on September 20th, and their show will be in Indianapolis, Indiana, and All Out will be in Toronto. So they're not even that far away. Keeps them in the same time zone, which means they probably are going to be head-to-head. At least I think Indianapolis is Eastern time. They probably are. Who knows? Anyway, how about Karrion Cross? Let's talk about Karrion Cross. Karrion Cross and Scarlett appear to be legitimately gone from the WWE. We talked about this on Saturday's podcast, that there's so much information, since his contract was rumored to come up, and we've been getting weekly updates, and nobody really knows what's going on. We've heard various reports about how he was offered a deal, but Cross hasn't signed it, or Cross and Scarlett say they haven't been offered a deal. Some people think they have. Some people think they haven't. Other fans thought they might have quietly re-signed their deal, and this is all part of some elaborate work or story to kind of bring Cross back in. But the way he was losing to Sami, felt like that was it for him. Even after the match at SummerSlam, I said that feels like it's it for Cross. But then again, I felt like the Rollins injury was mostly legit too. And so now you've got fans questioning everything, and based on what Cross said after WrestleMania and that wild promo and all the "we want Cross" chants, "we want Cross" hashtags, "we want Cross" signs we see in the crowd, the ovations he's getting when he comes out and has to wrestle on main event, it felt like this was all kind of being done by design if they're going to factor in or sew in his contract status to this story, making fans believe he's going to leave, even jobbing him out in his last match or on the way out. Do whatever they can to make fans believe that he's gone and then he's going to come back. And we all had that in our minds as a possibility, for sure. But then when you really think about it, what's he going to come back and do? It's not like he's been off TV or anything. We just saw him. He's been doing this whole thing with Sami. He lost all those matches to Sami, including the one at SummerSlam. So what's even the point of coming back now? What is he even doing? And I felt like maybe it's a situation where Triple H really likes Cross, but the company just doesn't have a place for him right now. And all those rehires, the Dakota Kais and the Braun Strowmans and the Karrion Crosses and the Ashantes, and there's like 4 or 5 others. Tegan Knox. Who else? There's a whole bunch of people that Triple H rehired after Vince left, only for them to be let go again. Samoa Joe, I think, was another one. So it might be a situation where Cross is really well liked by Triple H, but he also understands, there's nothing for us to really do for him here, even though the fans are clamoring for him. So we're just going to let him go, but I'll give him a SummerSlam match. He'll get that payday. We'll plug his book on the pre-show. That kind of thing. That's all I can think about as in terms of why he was used the way he was on his way out, because it's not typically done for you to have a match that high profile just days before your contract is up and the company essentially knows you are leaving. You know, SummerSlam is 2 nights, but there's only room for 12 matches. There was a whole lot of talent that didn't get booked on SummerSlam, and Cross did. So I can understand the feeling that this might be a work. This might be some sort of an elaborate work. But then, last night, right as we're going live for the watch-along, he drops his hour-plus-long documentary on YouTube. And I'm sorry, guys, I didn't watch it. It's too long. I didn't have time. But from what I can gather on the reaction from everyone, number one, it was really well done. I'll try to check it out if I can. I'm just, honestly, just being honest, not super interested in it. I can't help that. It's nothing against Cross. I just don't care to watch an hour of that. But based on what people saw there, sounds like, it really was a situation of where he was getting over on his own and the company wasn't liking it. He even said, I saw a bunch of clips and he talked about how he felt like the company was feeling like he was being rebellious. And he goes, I'm not trying to be rebellious. And we've seen this so many times. That's what's so frustrating about the Cross stuff is this guy is fallen victim to the same shit that other people have had to worry about. And that is when you get over without the company's permission, they resent you. And that's what happened, to fucking Zack Ryder and a lot of other guys who find themselves getting over on their own because they can't rely on the company to do it. They get fans behind them a little bit, but since it wasn't WWE's idea, they don't capitalize on it. And I was of the belief, I had said this in multiple podcasts when Cross was talking and he was on Main Event and they kept featuring him on those Netflix commercial interviews, like when people with regular Netflix watch commercials and the premium subscribers get to watch interviews or watch the match continue. He was always doing those type of interviews. And the fans were very, very loud and very, very vocal for him in the background. And I was saying that I felt like this was all by design. I felt like WWE was purposely doing this, purposely kind of shadow banning him a little bit, just having him on Main Event, having him come out during the commercial Netflix breaks, giving fans just quick glimpses of him in order to keep building the We Want Cross chants and all of that. This is going to be maybe a new character direction for Cross, where he was going to develop this swell of, fan support that was really going to drive, his next push or his next chapter or his next gimmick, whatever he's going to be doing. This was all going to be part of it. And I thought it was all done by design. Oh, WWE's definitely doing this on purpose. They want to manufacture this support for Karrion Cross with the fans. That's not what it was at all. Sounds like that support was legit. WWE wasn't trying to, breadcrumb trail the fans to a certain place. This was all Cross getting that support on his own, connecting with the fans on his own, getting them to tell WWE that they want to see him. And WWE just ignored it. While still keeping Cross on TV, it's not like he was in catering. They were having him on TV. So when they say we want Cross, WWE was giving you Cross. They were just giving you maybe the version of Cross you didn't want. And that's why, I'm not too outraged over this, because I liked Karrion Cross, especially this most recent rendition of him. He was pretty entertaining. But overall, as a performer, Cross doesn't do a whole lot for me. I like him, want to see success for him and Scarlett, but in terms of in the ring, a little bit of comparisons with Jey Uso just doesn't really do much for me. I don't dislike him. I don't really care at the same time. So I thought that was awesome that he was getting support from the audience because, maybe that will help whatever he does next. But all those other factors, I was always of the belief and wondering to myself that if this all was done for him just to come back and start something new, what would that something new be? Would his matches be any better? after those matches with Sami Zayn, I never want to see an exploder into the buckle ever again. It ruined the move for me. They were so bad. I remember 3 of them specifically that were so bad, with Sami hitting Cross on, they just a little somersault into the butt, just looked like shit. Now I hate that move. Thanks, Cross. Thanks, Sami. It's because of them that I hate the move. So I don't know what would be different if they just moved him over to SmackDown or did something else with him. So the closer and closer we got to last night, the more and more we started thinking that this was maybe really legit. And then on Saturday night, at midnight, which is exactly when Karrion Cross's and Scarlett's contracts expired on August 10th at midnight, they were immediately moved over to the alumni section on WWE.com. And that news got out, and everybody was talking about that. And again, with everything that we saw with Seth Rollins, a lot of fans like myself were saying the same things. I said, this is probably going to be a WWE Season 2 Unreal episode. This whole thing about how they fooled the wrestling world, they fooled all the dirt sheets, and they fooled Meltzer and Shawn and Pollock and everybody else. Everybody was fooled by the creative geniuses that are WWE, and they wanted to go, what we do outside the box, and we want to bring Karrion Cross back this way, and blah, blah, blah. And they're going to talk about how all the reactors were fooled, and nobody thought he was coming back, and everybody thought he was gone, and all that, only to bring him back and show that they fooled us all and pat themselves on the back and stroke themselves and all that. That's what I thought this was all going to be for. But and the alumni section doesn't mean anything. So on Saturday night, when breaking news, Cross and Scarlett moved to the alumni section, I'm like, if this was a work, and I'm WWE, I'm absolutely moving them to the alumni section. So moving them to the alumni section doesn't mean anything. But I can already see I can see Nick Khan, envision Nick Khan making this quote in Season 2 of Unreal when he's talking about Karrion Cross. I could see him saying, because you know how he blamed this fat douche blamed the poor Elimination Chamber ticket sales on the Canadian economy. Yeah, this country's MAGA, all right. So I can totally see him in Season 2 being like, yeah, we decided to move Cross and Scarlett to the alumni section on a Saturday night because we knew all the wrestling fans would be home. They love to throw the shade. So they moved him to the alumni section. Then last night, the documentary came out, which, unless this is all part of this work, it looks like they're gone. And I feel like with some of the stuff that he said in there, at least with the clips that I saw anyway, specifically that stuff about, if you're getting over and then they consider you rebellious or whatever. I don't think that's stuff WWE would want out there. If this was all part of a work, they would probably want to control that type of thing. So if this is some sort of a big work, great, but I don't think it is. I think at best at this point, all we can hope for is that it will turn into a work. And I think tonight might have been a big indicator of whether or not that was going to happen, because when the documentary was released last night after the contracts expired, when they were moved to the alumni section, a lot of fans, we have the We Want Cross was trending on social media. A lot of people were posting videos. I'm going to Raw to bring my We Want Cross sign, and we're going to be loud, and we're going to hijack the show. I saw people saying countdown to when the show gets hijacked. First of all, it's in Montreal, not here. Maybe you have a better chance here if you were in deer shit, Arkansas or something, but you're up in Montreal. That's not going to get hijacked. They don't give a fuck about Cross. But everybody, where the hell were they? So they were in Montreal on Friday. Where the hell was Raw tonight? Anyway, they weren't gonna hijack the show over Karrion Cross. Like in the past, WWE has given us far bigger and better reasons to hijack one of their shows than what went on with Cross. Nobody hijacked the show over R-Truth. He came back pretty quick, but there was no hijacking of shows. Fans were pissed, but fans have been pissed off a lot of times. There was times back, years ago in 2019 when they were wrestling when Raw and SmackDown was being performed in front of 3,000 people. Fans were so turned off by the product back then. There were times when fans would attempt to hijack a show or be really pissed and nothing came of it. We thought some fans were going to walk out and Raw's going to have an empty arena because Daniel Bryan got eliminated from the Royal Rumble. Like you think about all the times that the fans were just stark raving fucking pissed off and they said all that same shit. We're going to boycott. We're going to blah, blah, blah. No, the crowd's going to be, the arena's going to be full. Nobody's going to pay money to not go to the show. You're not going to buy a ticket and then say, oh, I'm just not going to get my money's worth out of the show. The fans aren't going to do that no matter how pissed off they are. And Karrion Cross, for as much support as he has and for as much support as I see him getting from pretty much everyone in the wrestling community behind the scenes, and fans and podcasters and whatnot, everybody seems to be supportive of Karrion Cross. But even with that support that he has, I didn't think they had any chance at all of even coming close to hijacking a show. At best, you would get a "We Want Cross" chant that lasts 8 seconds, and then it would just evaporate. But I didn't hear anything. I saw one "We Want Cross" sign, maybe two. Didn't hear any chants at all. Now, it is possible WWE was muting them. It's very possible that some cross chants broke out and WWE muted them. I was barely paying attention to the show. They definitely have the ability to do that, but it didn't feel like there was ever a chance. Even today, hours before the show, all these fans saying, we're going to hijack the show. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You must be too young. You must be new here to know that if WWE didn't get their shows hijacked all those years ago for things that deserved, for things that they deserved to get their show hijacked for, then it ain't going to happen here. It just wasn't. So, I feel like if there would have been a better outpouring of support for Cross, like if those chants would have been a little bit louder, if there would have been 1 million "We Want Cross" signs in the crowd, I think that's what WWE might have been looking at. I feel like from WWE's point of view, they're saying, well, let's see how it goes. Let's see if the support still happens, if we get chants on Monday Night Raw. Triple H might still be in contact with Cross. Hey, just hang tight. Let's see. Let's wait and see. Until then, try to go work, get as much work as you can. Don't sign a contract. Just don't sign a contract. Maybe that's still a possibility of happening. But if it's not, it looks like WWE kind of did Cross wrong. Because he started getting support. Fans wanted to see him. Hell, Paul Heyman, we even compared him to Stone Cold Steve Austin, which I thought was an insane comparison and not even close. I kind of chuckled at it. But even Paul Heyman supports Karrion Cross. So Cross has the support of a lot of people, myself included, but I don't know what we can really do with that support other than being vocal in your hashtags and whatnot, because if WWE is going to start pushing or featuring people that the fans want to see, or if that's what they tell people, they lie. They straight up lie, because fans have been calling for Cross to be doing more than what he's doing, and WWE is basically flat out ignoring that, just like they ignored the John Cena boos. They just pretended he was this white meat babyface that everybody loved, and the boos weren't even happening. La 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 la. We can't hear them. We can't hear them. And that's kind of what's frustrating, is that they only do what they want to do. And look at what happened with R-Truth. They brought him back, and I swear they only brought him back. Well, we know that they only brought him back for the Backlash. Fans lost their minds. Okay, let's bring him back, but all we're going to do is bring him back and pay him. He's still going to be back there, still just occasionally appearing on the show, maybe a match every now and then. But then he came out, cut his hair, and said, we're going to see a brand new R-Truth, a new side of R-Truth. And then on Friday on SmackDown, he's double doinking it with John Cena, and now he's right back to being who he was. But at least they brought him back and employ him now. But, R-Truth is getting a paycheck, good for him. But what the fuck else is he doing? WWE didn't want to take that support that he had and capitalize off the mistake that they made and turn a negative into a positive. They basically were just like, all right, let's shut these fucking fans up and let's bring him back and just pay him and keep him in the background. With no attempt, no effort, no desire to capitalize off, some of the most support R-Truth has ever had. His name was, we were talking about him a lot. And so WWE, I felt like they were maybe embarrassed, and then they don't want to remind themselves about this stupid mistake that they made. And they just kind of ignore R-Truth now. And he probably came back to sign a 1 or a 3-year deal, and they're probably just they're going to pay him for no reason just to sit there, when they could very well use him, because obviously the fans like him and they want to see him more. So the fans liking you and wanting to see more of you doesn't mean shit in this company. All that matters is who they like and who they want the fans to see more of. And every now and then you get somebody getting over that way. You know, Daniel Bryan, you know, the fans really, really force that issue. But WWE is going to fight it at every turn, and they're gonna just do what they want, you know, unless it really gets bad and the fans are so loud, so vocal that unfortunately you just can't help but pivot like they did at WrestleMania 30. And we haven't really seen something like that happen, you know, in quite a while. So Cross, as of right now, is gone. Also, another indicator that this is probably legit is he has merch up on Pro Wrestling Tees. So WWE, they might try to do their best to kind of do things differently and work the internet a little bit, but they're not going to go crazy here. And they're not going to let somebody put their shit over there when they can just be making it on shop. So the fact that he's got merch over there makes me think that this is all legit. So if he ever shows up again, I feel like at this point, it's not going to be, oh, they fooled us, they worked us. I think it's going to be, they legitimately did let him go, and then they want to do business, and hey, let's turn this into a work. That's the best we're getting now. But in terms of this whole thing being a work, doesn't look like it is. And all the best to Karrion Cross and Scarlett. They're a good-looking act. They can get work, hopefully, anywhere. Back to AAA. I know they had some issues with TNA. Hopefully those are a little bit better now. I'm unaware of his issues with Don Callis, something stemming from him and Scarlett back in TNA. You know, Cross could always go to AEW, but I think he was already offered a spot there and he declined once before. Who knows? And then on Tonight on Raw, by the way, Tonight on Raw, backstage when New Day was being interviewed with Grayson Waller, Xavier said, right when they were fading to commercial or fading to black or whatever, you hear him going TikTok. Then, later on, Corey Graves on commentary says something about controlling your narrative. So I don't know if these are little subtle subliminal, pulling my George W. Bush there, subliminal messages to Cross with the TikTok and the control your narratives. I don't know. Maybe it's them just messing with the fans a little bit. Hey, if I say this, the fans will pick up on it. They'll think it's a work. I have no idea what's going on. Or it could be support from Cross's friends in the company that are giving him little on-air messages just to say, hey, bro, we love you. I'm cool with that. I like that a lot. I remember when Shawn at WrestleMania 13, he was dancing his way to the ring and he flashed the click sign to the camera. The next night on Nitro, Nash comes out. Right back at you, HBK. Love that. So maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. But Cross, Karrion Cross, and Scarlett, both gone from the WWE. And I don't know how they just stay invisible forever. I mean, they still do have a lot of support right now. It would be weird to see them kind of fade away and go nowhere. When your contract expires, you have no compete. So Cross can show up somewhere tomorrow if he wants to. So hopefully they will, because when you've got momentum and you've got support behind you, you don't want that to fizzle. You want to capitalize that and strike when it's hot. WWE opted not to strike when it's hot. Maybe he can find somewhere or somebody or some promotion that's willing to. Best of luck to the both of them. Yeah, WWE screwed Cross when he was moved to the main roster. And they changed his entrance, the fucking helmet and stuff, and that loss to Jeff Hardy. But the thing is, I feel like he did recover from that. It took him a while, but everything that he's been doing the last few months, I felt like kind of separated him from that Karrion Cross. And that's another disappointing thing about it, because that was all WWE's fault too, and he was able to overcome that only to not do anything anyway. So WWE made a lot of mistakes with him. I don't think he's terribly great in the ring, but there's a lot of people who aren't terribly great in the ring that can still have passable matches and can still do enough, you know, with their characters that you don't care so much that they're not Eddie Guerrero in the ring, you know? Yeah. A and B, good to see you. Hope you guys had a good stream tonight. Let's see what happens with them. We will keep our eye on them, but I definitely think we're going to be seeing them popping up. They're not just going to disappear because there's no reason to. They got no compete. They can start working tomorrow. So let's hope we see Cross and Scarlett here in the very near future. And the bigger the platform, the better for those two. All right, we can finally start reviewing Monday Night Raw now. The reason I talked so much about that other stuff is because I didn't think tonight's Raw was going to take too long to get through. But as we mentioned in the beginning, the big Naomi versus Iyo Sky championship match was pulled and scrapped earlier on in the day as Naomi wasn't cleared to medically compete. So because of everything with Cross and with Seth, some folks are wondering if this was legit or not, but I think it is because Naomi wasn't even on camera tonight, and we don't know, at least right now, what the injury is. If there's been an update on that, you guys can let us know. I meant to check that. I haven't seen any updates on what caused her to be pulled, so we don't know if it's something minor or if it's something serious. It's kind of scary because she's the champ right now, and I don't want to see something happen to her run, like her have to forfeit the title or whatever. So we'll see with Naomi, but her match with Iyo Sky tonight was scrapped. So CM Punk, he was advertised to open the show. This will be his first time speaking since he won and lost the World Heavyweight title at SummerSlam, as he did do a run-in last week, but we didn't hear him talk. So tonight he comes out, he's on the mic, and he's pissed because he should be here representing these people or representing the WWE as champion, but he's not, and he's got a Seth Rollins problem. It seems like he's had a Seth Rollins problem ever since he got back there. And then he's interrupted by LA Knight. So LA Knight comes out, and we were wondering what LA Knight was going to think because he was pretty pissed off that Punk got in his business last week, but also it didn't look like LA Knight was really going to be winning any championships as he was about to get curb stomped on the outside. So Knight shows up, actually shakes the hand of CM Punk. There's kind of some like friendly tension here between the two. And Knight understands Punk's issues. He understands where he's coming from. He complimented him and put him over on beating Gunther and winning the World Heavyweight Championship, and you deserve to have that celebrated. But he said that because of what happened last week, Punk is going to get his title shot, and he deserves a title shot, but not before I get mine. So LA Knight basically says, I want the title shot first since you're the one that messed up my match last week. And then Punk says that you should thank me for saving your life because you weren't going to be winning any championships last week. Not only your career, but your life could have been over at the hands of that curb stomp, and I saved you. So you should be saying thank you to me, which I did enjoy. And he said, hey, I'm a former multi-time world champion. That's something you can't say. So if you want to be the number one contender, you're going to have to get behind me. I'm first. So you can tell what they're setting up here. They're either setting up Rollins defending against multiple people or us getting a number one contenders match. And that's when Paul Heyman then interrupts. He comes out with Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed and lays down a tag team challenge for the main event, Punk and LA Knight against Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. So that's what they set up there, and that would be our main event later on. So it was going to be, can they coexist? But, Punk and LA Knight, it was one of those can they coexist things that we've seen so many times. But Punk and Knight had a pretty respectable, for someone who feels like he got screwed out of the title because someone interfered, they really handled their beef well. There was a matter of respect between them. Also, I liked that visual. These are two of the best on the mic, and we haven't seen them ever, I don't think, back and forth in the ring. I don't think we've seen LA Knight and CM Punk in any sort of a segment on television together, and if we have, it's been pretty brief. So it was cool to see two of the best talkers going at it. I enjoyed that, and I was enjoying their dynamic. Kind of wanted to see more of it, to be honest. So I actually liked the exchange between Punk and LA Knight there, and the two of them agreeing to face Heyman's crew in the main event. So Punk, I like it when Punk is cool with people. Like I like Punk and Cody side by side. I just think that's a cool visual. So same with Punk and LA Knight. Punk and Roman can kind of be fun too. At some point, I think Punk and Rollins will find themselves on the same side. They're going to have such a rivalry that I feel like at some point there's going to have to be some sort of level of closure or respect or handshake before Punk retires, and Seth probably won't be too far behind him. But yeah, that'll be our main event for later. And then we go backstage to the Judgment Day's clubhouse. Dominic brings in El Grande Americano. None of the Judgment Day members like that. Balor, Dominic, come here, buddy. pulls him aside, like, hey, brother, I don't think any of the members want him in there. I think El Grande would be great in Judgment Day. I think he would be just as fun as Carlito, and you could have El Grande Americano back there just playing like Sega Genesis in the background. Oh, that would be so fun. So I am all for El Grande joining the Judgment Day. I don't know why it's such a bad idea. I think he'd fit right in. But that led us to our tag team match, and the reason Grande was around there is because he's got a tag match next against AJ Styles and Dragon Lee. So Dom and El Grande were just talking strategy. That's all. And Judgment Day got all fucking butthurt about it. So next we had Dominic Mysterio and El Grande Americano. They're taking on AJ Styles and Dragon Lee in a tag team match. And of course, coming up here in just a few days, Dominic is getting a shot at the AAA Championship. He's going to be in that four-way with Vikingo and Dragon Lee and El Grande Americano. So that match is coming up this weekend. El Grande, of course, as we know, he likes to use that little piece of steel that he loads in his mask to deliver a headbutt to his opponents. But Dominic, who comes out in his lucha mask now, he's kind of doing that entrance, which I love. Dom puts his lucha mask on. Grande gives him the little piece of metal, and Dominic loads up his own lucha mask. And then El Grande reverses AJ into the ropes, and Dominic is able to headbutt AJ right in the face, and El Grande is able to pin him and get the win for his team. Dominic and El Grande steal a win from AJ and Dragon Lee. And then we're backstage with Sami Zayn and Adam Pearce, and we were wondering why Sami Zayn, outside of it being in Montreal, why Sami was on SmackDown. We figured, obviously it's just a way to get him on the show, but at least it wasn't completely random because it tied into everything here. So Sami also, in addition to Punk and LA Knight, he also wants a championship shot. So does Jey Uso, by the way, who would show up later on in a backstage segment and also say that he wants a title shot. So Sami is talking to Pierce, and Pierce says, look, I can't promise anything, but why don't we get through tonight first? You got a match with Sheamus. Let's see how that goes. We'll talk again. And that's when Sheamus shows up. And Pierce, because I just figured when the match was announced that Sheamus would just come out here and cause the DQ. I thought that when they showed the match graphic 6 days ago. I'm like, oh, Sheamus interferes, disqualification. That's what we're getting. But then Sheamus shows up here, and Pierce is like, look, I'm sick of you guys fighting all over the place. You cannot do that anymore. And you guys, he's basically just tells him to stay away from Sheamus. And then Sami politely, way more politely than Pierce, says, hey, Sheamus, we're friends. I would appreciate it if you can just butt out of this one and let me handle Rusev on my own. And Sheamus agrees, but he did say the minute that bell rings, then it's on. So Sheamus has agreed to at least stay away for Sami until the bell rings. So I'm like, how are we going to... Because we're not going to get a finish in Sami and Rusev. Sami's not beating Rusev. Rusev's not beating Sami. And Sheamus is banned from ringside. It's all starting to make sense now. He was on SmackDown. I'm like, oh, okay. I kind of had a feeling I knew what we were going to see there. Then we cut to Iyo Sky and Adam Pearce after that. And Iyo Sky wants... This was so funny because I think when Pearce is done with Sheamus and whatnot, we might have gone to commercial. I don't remember. We come back and he's back there with Iyo Sky. And Iyo Sky, she's like a little kid. She's got that funny little broken English. And she's like, I want the title match I was promised. And just watching her be like, I want my match. And I'm like... Iyo, you can say that all he can't do anything about it. Like, Naomi was not cleared to wrestle. Dude, like, shit happens. You're going to get your title shot at another time. How is this not understood by you? Why are you talking to Pierce as if he can undo a medical report and make somebody medically cleared to wrestle? She's not medically cleared. The match is off. There's no point in even bitching at this point. There's nothing you can do about it. It's out of your hands. So I kind of thought that was funny that she was kind of like acting like a spoiled kid on Christmas. No, but I want my presents now. Like, no, she's like the fucking kid at Willy Wonka. I want it now. She just reminded me of a little kid. I'm like, Iyo, you're a veteran. You're way smarter than this. You understand how shit works. You understand that sometimes you get hurt. You're not cleared. You've probably not been cleared a few times in your life. So I just thought it was weird that she was acting like a little spoiled brat about the whole thing. And then Roxanne and Raquel show up. And then Iyo is basically like, hey, how about I just face you, and challenges Roxanne to a match. And Pierce says, fine, let's make it official. So it's going to be Roxanne and Iyo Sky later on. That'll be our replacement match for Iyo and Naomi. Then we have the Sami Zayn versus Rusev match. And like I said earlier, now that Sheamus has agreed to stay away, how are we going to not get a finish? Because I just did not see either of these guys' shoulders being pinned to the mat. Maybe it's a double count out. Maybe they brawl into the crowd. I had no idea. What it turned out to be was the MFTs, who Sami dealt with on Friday. I think he beat Solo Sikoa right in a non-title match. So it was the MFTs that caused the DQ. I knew something had to cause this match to get thrown out or cause a disqualification, which I believe Rusev would have been disqualified here. So it was Sami beating Rusev via DQ when all the MFTs show up and beat the fuck out of Sami Zayn. Then, because the match is over and the bell rang, Sheamus shows up and him and Rusev brawl all the way through the crowd. I think we might have gone to a commercial after that. We come back and Adam Pearce is in the back yelling at Nick Aldis on the phone as he's throwing out the MFTs out the back door, being like, what the fuck, dude? So that was kind of funny. And then a referee shows up and tells Adam Pearce that they have successfully separated Sheamus and Rusev. So it's got to be Clash in Paris. I think the fans are going to love some blow-off banger between Rusev and Sheamus. I don't want this booked for next Monday's Raw or whatever. Have they announced anything on social media about these two guys? It's got to be Clash in Paris. So maybe next week we get some official announcement on what the match will be. But because of all the brawling that they're doing and all the fighting, we're going to have to get a stipulation there. And it might just be something like a fancy France throwdown, a Belfast street fight, some street fight, some shit with Paris tied into it. I don't know. It's probably going to be something street fight related. I don't think it'll be a cage. It could be a Hell in a Cell, but I don't even think Hell in a Cell is really necessary. It's probably just going to be some sort of a street fight type of thing. Last man standing perhaps, but some sort of street fight is what I would assume they're going to do, and that should be at Clash in Paris, and it should be a really good match. And then we're backstage again with New Day. I don't know if this aired on Netflix or if this is commercial break, but New Day and Grayson Waller, they want revenge on Penta for Penta stealing the big hat and throwing it at him, and Xavier's all mad. And anyway, it turns out that we're going to get Xavier Woods versus Penta next week. And right when they faded out of that segment, that's when you heard Xavier Woods say TikTok. So I'm wondering if that was his way of saying, hey, Karrion Cross, I love you, bro. Then it was time for Iyo Sky and Roxanne, and Iyo Sky continues to prove why I think she's the best women's wrestler in the world. I do. She's so good. She's so good. If Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley are Hall and Nash, Iyo Sky's Shawn. She's just tremendous. Great matches with everybody, and this one was no different. The only part that scared me, they had a really bad landing on Iyo Sky's moonsault near the end of the match when I think the spot was supposed to be Roxanne getting her feet up and catching Iyo, because when they get their feet up and you come off that moonsault and the way you hit and you flip over, it's so awesome. But there was miscommunication somewhere. Maybe Iyo Sky thought she was supposed to hit the moonsault and she went in for it more like she was supposed to hit it. But when she came back on the backflip and Roxanne has her feet up, Iyo Sky's legs basically landed on the face of Roxanne, and she appeared to be fine, but that was a really ugly looking spot there that was confusing. I don't know what they were trying to do. But the match itself, other than that part, was great. Roxanne, she's good. She really is good. She looks like a little child to me, but she's really good. And Iyo Sky acts like a child, but she's even better. And this match was actually a lot of fun. Now, backstage prior to this match, Iyo Sky had a conversation with the Kabukis who keep wanting to help her out. Asuka was like, how about we be in your corner tonight? And Io's like, nah, man, I'm good. Stop bothering me. So she went out for her match, but the Kabukis came out anyway. And they came out, I think Asuka jumped up on the apron. They might have both jumped up on the apron, and they did the thing where Iyo comes running in, almost hits him, but stops. And then she gets shoved by Roxanne into the Kabukis, and then Roxanne rolls up Iyo Sky and actually pins her and gets the win. Huge win for Roxanne. So I guess Iyo was probably going to lose either way. And I have a feeling the finish that we saw in Iyo Sky and Roxanne was exactly the finish for Iyo Sky and Naomi. Had to be, 100%. Because they've already been doing the thing with the Kabukis on TV last week where they want to be helping out. They want to be in her corner. So Iyo Sky, I was not expecting to win the title from Naomi tonight if that match would have happened. This is exactly the finish I could have seen happening. So I think either way, the Kabukis were going to cost Iyo Sky her match. They just changed the opponent from Naomi to Roxanne. That's my belief there. The Intercontinental Championship was on the line, and I forgot that this match was for the title because all week long I was thinking to myself, I'm like, they've got a 1-2-3 Kid and Razor Ramon situation sitting right here. I'd have Maxine catch a quick one on Becky. You know, Becky's going to probably underestimate her, toy with her a little bit. Maxine can execute some move that she learned from Chad Gable that Becky didn't see coming and catch her on a quick pin. But then when they were doing the introductions, I totally forgot that it was for the title. I'm like, okay, you can't have that. Becky, the Intercontinental Champion, she did what I thought she would. She did toy with Maxine a little bit, and that Maxine tried her best, had a few flurries here and there, but ultimately Becky was able to best Maxine with the disarmor. For the win, Maxine taps out, but good effort by Maxine. We like Maxine on this channel. She's tremendous. After the match, Becky nails Natalya from behind with the Intercontinental Championship, and I really wish WWE would not tease me like this because I would love nothing more than for Natalya to win the Intercontinental Championship. I was of the belief that Natalya should have been the first ever women's Intercontinental Champion, and I'm still of that belief. Lyra's great. Becky's great. Every other woman that's going to hold that title is great, but the first one who should have held that should have been Natalya. For all the years she's put into that company, for how much she's beloved by the roster there, and her years, over decades of service there, and her family history and her family lineage, specifically with that championship, you know, with her Uncle Brett and her Uncle Owen and her Uncle Davey, all holding the championship. Who's Natalya's mom? Jim Neidhart. Okay, yeah, so she's not the daughter of an IC title holder, but all of her uncles are. And that title being resurrected or created in a women's division, and the first person you have hold that title is a Hart family member, how do you not do that? I'm still pissed about that. I think that would have been such a feel-good story. It would have been so good for Natalya. It would have been so good for the history of the Hart family and the history of the WWE to have a Hart family name at the beginning of that new Intercontinental Championship legacy. The reason the Intercontinental Championship itself, that beautiful belt hanging right there, has the legacy that it does is because of what a lot of the Hart family members did, along with your Steamboats and your Savages and your Shawns and your Perfects. And they were a big part of that legacy, and I'm still pissed that Natalya did not win that belt for the first time. Now they're starting to tease a program with Becky. So if that happens, I hope Natalya beats Becky for the championship, but I have my doubts there as well. I almost feel like Natalya has no chance to win that championship, and if she does, it's going to come much later against an opponent that's not Becky Lynch. I think if Becky Lynch is going to put anybody over, it's going to be your Lyras and your younger ones. And that might be what WWE wants for her too. But since she nailed Natalya from behind with the title after she beat Maxine here tonight, I'm thinking that we're going to get a Becky Lynch versus Natalya match. And that would be great for Paris. That would be tremendous for Paris. Clash in Paris. Natalya beating Becky Lynch for the Intercontinental Championship in Paris would be wonderful. I just have my doubts if they would do that. But Natalya should have been the first ever Intercontinental Champion, and I'll forever be bitter about that. Seth Rollins backstage. This is where he tells his crew he's leaving. He's going to go on the plane and watched Dora the Explorer or whatever. So he says, you guys got this. You'll win your match. And he leaves. So I knew that was bullshit. I knew that he was either going to turn back up, or if they lose later and then Jey Uso and Roman Reigns runs in, they're going to be pissed that Rollins abandoned them to get outnumbered by the babyfaces. And then we got a really weird kind of Bayley vignette. You guys see that? The Bayley, it was kind of like a sit-down vignette type of thing where she seems very down on herself, very vulnerable, very uncertain of her future, kind of like a hopeless demeanor towards about her, sort of. And the way it was edited, when it ended, you hear this like weird kind of like laugh at the end. And I'm like, I don't know if I should have read into that, or if that was just something they did for effect or what. But are we watching the beginning of like a Bayley breakdown, or are we watching the beginning of Bayley either going completely off her rocker, or is she going to go back to the hugger? I almost felt like with that laugh at the end, it was very Fiend-like. Is she going to come back as some member of the Wyatt Six or something and then snap out of it and become the hugger again? I don't know. But it was almost like a little bit concerning and alarming. A concerning or alarming vibe to it is what I meant to say. Because right after that, you've got Jackie Redmond interviewing Lyra, and Lyra's like, it wasn't my fault. Well, it wasn't because of what I said last week, was it? Like, she was immediately being like, I didn't do this, did I? So it feels like nobody wants to take blame for this. And because it wasn't, she was pulling her best Snitsky impression there with saying multiple times, it's not my fault. And it almost felt like she was worried, like, hey, if Bayley does something to herself, don't y'all blame me for this. I wouldn't tread in that direction, not nowadays. There's if you wanted to do a self-deletion angle, maybe as a PSA or something like that, you're trying to send a message. There's better ways to do it today than, Hawk being pushed off the Tron when he climbed up there to the top. But, I wouldn't, I don't think they're doing that, but if they are thinking about it, I wouldn't have anybody playing a character that is suffering from really, really, really deep mental depression, because that's a big problem in the world. Like, unless you framed it in such a way to where it's going to send a message to your young fans, or maybe there's a nice little message at the end of the show. When Raw does the executive producer Lee Fitting and Triple H thing, right after that, if you or anyone is suffering from, suicidal thoughts or anything, call this number. Like, if there's some sort of like message at the end, because you do see that at the end. Where were we seeing that? Was it the end of like Dark Side of the Ring? Was it some of those episodes? When you're dealing with really bad topics like this, a lot of times there's a prevention number you can call, or a help number, or anything like that. So if you were going to like take it in that direction to where Bayley just feels like the whole world is shitting on her and everybody is against her, and they want to turn that into some sort of a depression storyline, I just think you have to tread carefully for that, or with that, because you could very well connect with people and maybe even save some people from, falling too deep in depression. But if it's done in a tasteless manner, or if you Katie Vick this thing, it could have the opposite effect. But maybe tapping into that is an angle they will try to do in the future. But Bayley, it just feels like your typical, nothing is going my way. I'm starting to run out of ideas, and I'm starting to wonder what the point of all of it is. So that itself has been done many times before. That's not that out of the ordinary for a wrestling angle to have somebody feeling that way. But the way the vignette ran, the way Lyra was like, that's not my fault, is it? She's either going to go crazy in an entertaining way or maybe a more dark way. And with the importance on good mental health and how crucial that is, in society today. If you did any sort of an angle that plays into that, I would just be careful. That's all. But they're probably not even doing that. Right after Lyra is worried that she might have been the one to throw Bayley into this pit of despair, Iyo briefly runs into Stephanie Vicaire and Rhea Ripley. Vicaire just says, hey, you're not the only one promised a title shot, and that's kind of interesting. So with Vicaire and Iyo and Rhea all there, I'm wondering if they're maybe laying some sort of a groundwork if you have to strip Naomi. If Naomi's injured and she can't defend the title, they're probably going to have to do a four-way. It might be 2 4-ways. It's going to be Rollins' four-way, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you might have to vacate Naomi's title, and you do Iyo Sky, Stephanie Vicaire, Rhea Ripley. I guess a 3-way. You do those 3, Iyo Sky, Vicaire, and Rhea Ripley, since Naomi is out. So not a 4-way. You would do there's not one more woman I'm forgetting, right? No, just those 3. So yeah, there would be a triple threat. That's what they're going to do in Paris if Naomi is injured to the point where she can't defend the title. And I think that's what that backstage little spot there was intended to set up. If it's not going to be Naomi, it's going to be the 3 of them in a triple threat. And that on paper, honestly, sounds a lot better than Naomi and Iyo Sky. But I want to see Naomi have this run. I want to have her see it through, which I believe is going to be a short run. I think it's going to end in October anyway in Perth, but at least get her to that point, and all the best to Naomi. Hopefully her injury is not that bad. Then, yeah, you're right, Rodrigo. Bayley's probably just going to go heel here in the end is what it's going to mean, but it's just the way she was delivering everything and how down she was. It might turn her into a monster. I hope it does. That leaves us with the main event. LA Knight, CM Punk teaming up to take on Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. Didn't know if we were going to get a finish in this one. I thought we could because of some of the dissension between LA Knight and CM Punk. That's been clear. There's a respect there, but you could easily see how it could go off the rails. So it was going to be the can they coexist type of thing. And in the end, we did get a DQ finish here, and it was Seth Rollins who showed up, and he attacked CM Punk from behind. Bell rings. It's a disqualification. That I didn't like. That's why this Raw was so kind of boring to me, because that felt like a predictable finish doing the DQ. Had a feeling we'd get guys running in. Seth Rollins saying he was leaving. I felt like he'd come back. I thought we were going to see Roman Reigns tonight because Roman Reigns has been advertised for Clash in Paris. So he's going to be working the show. So I thought we would see him kind of run out in the end. But they kind of already set up that it wouldn't be Roman Reigns because Jey Uso had the little thing backstage. So anybody who was going to be running in once Seth ran in was going to be Jey Uso. So I thought, okay, we probably won't see Roman tonight, but we're probably going to see him next week. Jey Uso runs in. He makes the save. All the heels run away. And that's when Adam Pearce storms out to the aisleway, and he makes a big championship match for Clash in Paris. He said, Seth, since you like to continuously lie to us and try to deceive us, you are going to get an opportunity to defend your title against all 3 of these guys at Clash in Paris. LA Knight, CM Punk, and Jey Uso will all be getting the title shot in a fatal 4-way, and that is official. So now Punk and Knight are looking at each other. Hey, we're both getting the title shot. They start pushing and shoving a little bit, and they start fighting, so the heels pounce. In comes Rollins and Breaker and Reed, and they start beating the hell out of everybody. Multiple stomps, and they just decimate the baby faces. Reed and Breaker grab a hold of Punk. One of them's got their finger in his mouth. That's the fucking thumbnail we used here, while Rollins just taunts him and shakes the belt in his face and in front of his 47-year-old face, because in the opening promo, Braun Breaker goes, you're 47. What are you going to do? And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I'm 47. Yeah, fuck you, Braun. Actually, I'm about to be 48, but I'm still technically 47. So that's how the show went off the air. The baby faces getting absolutely destroyed, despite the OTC chants. There was no OTC, but he will be at Clash in Paris in some form. So I thought he was going to be part of some sort of a tag. I thought they might be setting up like Rollins and Reed and Breaker versus Punk, Knight, and Roman, but then Jay got involved. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's going to be 4-on-4, and then tonight they wound up setting up the championship match instead, which means Roman is going to face probably Bronson Reed. I think they're going to hold off on Braun Breaker. I think there's a reason why Reed is the one to take the shoes off. He's the Shoe LaFala guy, not Braun Breaker, because I think they want to save Braun Breaker and Roman Reigns. They want to tease us with it, but that would probably be a WrestleMania match. Braun Breaker and Roman Reigns, perhaps. So I think Roman will face Bronson Reed at Clash in Paris and probably beat him and then get his ass kicked by Braun Breaker. So I feel like Roman Reigns, because he's either the opener or the closer, Clash in Paris, it'll be Roman Reigns and Bronson Reed opening the show. Roman will win. We might even get a little post-match action between Roman and Braun Breaker that maybe Roman gets the best of. And then in the main event, Rollins successfully defends his championship and finds a way to win. And I think Roman could be involved in that too. Seth Rollins will survive. He will retain in Clash in Paris over those guys, Punk and Knight and Jay. So you could have Reed and Breaker obviously getting involved in that because it's a four-way with no rules. Roman could then choose to get involved in that to help out, but might accidentally Superman punch someone like his cousin by accident, and Jey Uso takes the pin. I think Jey Uso takes the pin in that match, in that fatal four-way. I think they protect Knight and they protect Punk, and Jey takes the pin, and I wouldn't be surprised if it might be at the hands of his own cousin, Roman Reigns, albeit by accident, but still comes at the hands of Roman Reigns. So I kind of feel like that's where it's going to go. My only question is if Naomi does have to forfeit the title, who wins it? Does it go right back on Rhea? I'd put it on Iyo Sky. I'd put it on Iyo Sky and then have Rhea Ripley beat Iyo Sky in Perth for the title. So you can kind of predict how Clash in Paris is going to go. Roman over Reed, Rollins retaining in the main event, and then if Naomi is cleared, she will retain over Stephanie. Oh, it's Stephanie Vaquer. That's what I'm forgetting. She will retain over Stephanie Vaquer. And then if she is injured and they have to relinquish the title, it's Iyo, Stephanie, and Rhea, and you have Iyo Sky win the championship, which means Rhea Ripley still hasn't beaten her. And then you do the match in Perth. Ripley wins. Stephanie wins the Rumble. Stephanie beats Ripley at WrestleMania for the championship. So you can still get there. I kind of think that Clash in Paris is slightly predictable, but I think it's going to be a fun show because those international crowds are a trip. And if they do add something like Sheamus and Rusev in some sort of crazy bonkers stipulation street fight, I think that'll be a lot of fun. Just don't do a finish where there's like a crash pad and all that. Just don't do that. Do something better than that. And I think the show will be fun. So anyway, that's your Raw tonight in a nutshell. Not that great of a show in my opinion. Ricky Saints or Ethan Page joining the faction? Maybe. Yeah, I am too, Max. Glad that Becky had different opponents with Maxine and Natty, because that Lyra shit and was dragging on with Bayley and whatnot. So I'm kind of glad that that's over for now, and now Becky can move on to something else. And I really, really want Natty to win that title one day. James Rosano, good to see you back in here, man. How long has it been? Right on. Okay, well that is it. Okay, yeah, not the most active chat tonight, but that's okay. Raw wasn't very good. I wasn't expecting tonight's stream to be setting the world on fire. But yeah, we talked about Cross, we talked about WWE counter-programming AEW, and we ran through the results of tonight's Monday Night Raw, and now we've got a pretty clear picture painted for what's going to be going down at Clash in Paris. And they will start finalizing the rest of that card probably in the next two TVs. We'll have a couple matches probably announced on Friday, and then Next Monday, we'll probably make Sheamus and Rusev official. We'll find out what Roman's doing, most likely by next week. And hopefully we'll have some answers on Naomi, whatever's going on with her. And yeah, I think that's about it. Juliet rolling in here now, slightly late, but I'm about to be leaving out the door. But thanks for stopping in here at the very end, Juliet. And if you guys could do me a favor, just hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Keep a lookout on the channel this week. I got some shorts to drop on you, and we'll be here for the podcast this week, and of course a whole another weekend of festivities. But I think you'll be seeing me prior to that. I'll be up here for a mic drop or something. There's got to be something going on. So it will not be long. And yes, today was the birthday of Hulk Hogan. I meant to mention that earlier and I forgot, but yes, happy 72nd birthday to the late Hulk Hogan. You guys have a great rest of your Monday, and I'll be catching you real soon. Peace.